Hello and welcome to this 2 Degrees hosted webinar on water risk assessment tools with a focus on global and local tools provided by IPIECA and GEMI. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone that you can submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A box on the bottom right hand of the side of the screen. Just type in your question and press send. Also, if you should have any technical issues during the presentation, please use the chat box on the right hand side to send me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. It's my pleasure to now hand you over to Carl Fennessy of ConocoPhillips, who is the co-chair of the GEMI Water Work Group, as well as the co-chair of the IPIECA Water Work Group. Over to you, Carl.
Thank you, Stephen. As he just mentioned, I'm Carl Fennessy of ConocoPhillips, and I'm the co-chair of the GEMI Water Work Group and the co-chair of the IPIECA Water Work Group. On behalf of GEMI and IPIECA, I want to welcome you all to this seminar. We're very pleased to be sharing this with you today, and a focus on global and local tools is provided by IPIECA and GEMI, and we want to thank our partner for this webinar, the 2 Degrees Network, and its team. This webinar will highlight the business value of using water risk assessment tools, providing an overview of the available tools and how they are mutually supportive. Input is always solicited from participants who have successfully used the water risk assessment tools and their experiences, challenges, and any innovative ways that we may be able to adapt the tools to specific business operations. The agenda for today will be provided for you with a brief synopsis of GEMI and then an overview of the local water tool, followed by a Q&A session. Should you have any questions, we ask that you send them via the Q&A box. Please note we'll do our best to answer all the questions. I'd like to note that with all GEMI and IPIECA meetings and webinars and calls, they're conducted under the auspices of the GEMI Antitrust Guidelines and the IPIECA Antitrust Guidelines. Anyone who's taking notes should indicate in their notes that these guidelines were covered. Let me quickly go over who the companies are and the organizations. GEMI, the Global Environmental Management Initiative, is a leader in developing insights and creating environmental sustainability solutions for businesses. Its mission is business helping business achieve environmental sustainability excellence. These are the GEMI members. Some of the signature issues that GEMI manages are around water sustainability, supply chain, climate change and energy, sustainable development and emerging issues, and communications for professionals. Who is IPIECA? IPIECA is an international oil and gas association for environmental and social issues. It was formed in 1974 following the launch of UNEP, and it's the only global upstream organization involving both upstream and downstream for the oil and gas industry. Its membership covers over half the world's oil production. These are the IPIECA members. IPIECA focuses on oil and gas in the industry to improve environmental and social performance by developing and promoting good practices and solutions, enhancing communications, engaging members both inside and outside of the industry, and working in partnership with key stakeholders. IPIECA is the industry's principal channel of communications within the United Nations. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stephen Lehman of Geosyntec, who will be moderating this webinar, as well as the October workshop. In addition, Bill Gill from Smithfield Foods and Maggie Monahan from Chevron will be sharing how their companies are using the tools. Steve?
Thank you, Carl. Welcome, everyone, and greetings from Atlanta. My name is Steve Lehman. I'm an aquatic scientist with Geosyntec Consultants. And with my previous firm, I participated and contributed to the development of the GEMI Local Water Tool. And I bring some applied experience as well in assisting a company in piloting the use of the GEMI Local Water Tool for oil and gas. Before I dive into the objectives, I want to remind you again, if you have questions, please send them to the Q&A box. Or if you have any thoughts or suggestions regarding the forthcoming workshop that we'll be discussing toward the end, please share those as well. That'll be helpful in planning the workshop activities. The objectives of today's webinar are threefold. First, we want to build awareness of the business value of using water risk assessment tools. Second, to provide an overview of the GEMI and IPIECA tools in particular and their strengths and benefits for conducting global and local water assessments. And third, we want to encourage your company's participation in a workshop to be held in October to learn more about using these tools and how other companies are adapting them to specific operations. Well, why are companies assessing their water use, or why should companies consider assessing their water use? Let's begin by examining water use and its associated business risks. There are numerous factors that may contribute to a company's water-related risks, and you've heard of many, if not most of these. Population growth, which increases demand and competition for fresh water. Water scarcity in many parts of the world. Water pollution, climate change and its associated hydrologic variability and weather extremes, which increases uncertainty and risk for future water supply reliability. Also, greater public and media awareness and scrutiny of water use practices. As a result of these factors, companies are becoming much more attuned to the potential business risks of poor water management. In its 2013 World Water Week report, the Stockholm International Water Institute identified 5 types of potential business risks listed here. 3 of these are very broadly recognized risks. Operational risks, which are physical risks mainly, related to reduced availability, quality, and reliability of water. Reputational risks, when public disputes arise concerning local community needs, which can threaten a company's social license to operate. And regulatory risks of new fees, regulations, and lawsuits where a company's water use is seen as conflicting with the public interest. There are many potential drivers or reasons for companies to conduct water risk assessments. I've listed a few of them here. They may include identifying the high-risk sites or facilities in a company's portfolio, focusing on technologies that reduce water use and consumption, perhaps addressing community interests or concerns regarding a company's social license to operate, or maintaining a company's reputation as an environmental steward. There are many reasons listed here and others you can think of, but all of these may contribute to a company's efforts to improve or enhance its overall management of water. There are a variety of water risk assessment tools currently available to companies, each suited for certain purposes. This slide provides you a snapshot of available tools. It's not all of them, but it's many of them. And each of the tools shown here are available free to download or to use on the internet. Several tools assess risks at a global or portfolio level, as indicated in the global context column. These tools rely to a large extent on country and regional data sets, and most of these tools also provide mapping features for visualizing the locations of high-risk sites. Examples in this table include the World Business Council for Sustainable Development's Global Water Tool, IPIECA's Global Water Tool for Oil and Gas, and the World Resources Institute's Aqueduct. A smaller number of these tools assess risks at the site or facility level, as indicated by the local context column. These would include the GEMI Local Water Tool and the GEMI Local Water Tool for Oil and Gas. And the performance of these tools relies heavily on the use of credible local data sets to understand risks and impacts at a local level around your facility. Today's webinar focuses on the business value of using the IPIECA and GEMI tools outlined by the green box. Together, they can provide for a robust and comprehensive water risk assessment. In addition, I'll be touching on the close relationship between the World Business Council for Sustainable Development's Global Water Tool and the IPIECA Global Water Tool for Oil and Gas. The IPIECA Global Water Tool and the GEMI Local Water Tool, they can be used either separately or in sequence. Key strengths of using these tools together, however, include mutual compatibility, nomenclature, data, and software, the use of credible data sets available in the public domain, inputs from company facility data for generating water use metrics, and the ability to link local impacts and risks at specific sites to proactive water management planning. Now let's explore in greater detail the benefits of using the IPIECA Global Water Tool and GEMI Local Water Tool and how they can be mutually supportive. Let's start by examining the relationship between global and local tools. Global and local water risk assessments answer questions at different scales. The IPIECA Global Water Tool and the World Business Council Global Water Tool are used to identify and prioritize high-risk sites in a company's portfolio of sites. So they can be used to answer questions such as how many of your sites are in extremely water-stressed areas and therefore are at greater risk, how many sites are in countries lacking access to improved water supply or sanitation, and how will all that look in the future. The World Business Council Global Water Tool is available for use by all business sectors. It was launched in 2007 and has been so popular, it's been downloaded and used by over 300 companies. Based on its wide acclaim and acceptance, IPIECA has customized that tool as the global water tool for the oil and gas sector. The GEMI Local Water Tool is used to further evaluate high-risk sites and identify actions to manage the risks at a site-specific level. So it answers questions such as what are the water risks at this site, which risks are greatest, and what is your current management method for mitigating those risks. The GEMI Local Water Tool is also currently available in two versions, one for general use by all business sectors and one customized for oil and gas. The GEMI tool was launched in 2012, and the IPIECA Global Water Tool was launched in 2011. The Global Water Tool provides high-level risk assessment of a global portfolio of sites. How does it do this? Well, it compares your company's water use site by site with validated water, sanitation, and population information. It enables calculation of water consumption, efficiency, and intensity metrics, and it establishes relative water risk in your company's portfolio to prioritize action. It also creates sustainability reporting indicator data for sharing with sustainability reporting indices such as Dow Jones, Bloomberg, CDP Water, and it enables effective communication with internal and external stakeholders on your company's water issues. If you are not one of the thousands who've downloaded the Global Water Tool to this point, I would encourage you after this presentation to go to the IPIECA website and go ahead and download the tool and look at the how to use it information and begin to gain some familiarity with it. I'll also share with you at the end of the presentation that website address. Outcomes of the Global Water Tool. The Global Water Tool compares site locations with country and watershed data, such as total renewable water resources per person, agricultural water withdrawal as a part of total water withdrawal, population served with improved water, and a variety of other parameters. The tool then generates maps and provides graphical and tabular summaries of a variety of water risk metrics, and it uses color coding as shown here to indicate levels of water scarcity. So the yellow indicates water-stressed areas, orange indicates scarcity, and red indicates extreme scarcity. So when a company has a global portfolio risk assessment completed, what happens next? Well, you can use the local water tool for those high-risk sites. So based on metric trends and data, the highest risk sites here potentially indicated by the yellow, orange, and red coding, they may warrant further site-specific assessment. So the specific site data can then be transferred from the global water tool to the local water tool for a local water risk assessment of each site. So as you can see depicted above, the IPIECA Global Water Tool would transfer data to the GEMI Local Water Tool for oil and gas, and the World Business Council Global Water Tool would transfer to the GEMI Local Water Tool for other business sectors. While the Global Water Tool consists of just one Excel file with all of your sites, the Local Water Tool will set up an Excel file for each site to go through a local water assessment. So you can see sites A, B, C, and D here would have individual Excel files for use of the Local Water Tool. The goals of the GEMI Local Water Tool then are to help companies assess impacts, risks, opportunities, and manage water-related issues at specific sites, provide a common and consistent visualization platform, provide interconnectivity between the global and local tools, and a uniform approach between site assessments, and then to create a central repository of information, not only for creating reports for multiple water questionnaires, but also for compiling information about environmental conditions surrounding your site. Again, I would encourage you, if you have not yet downloaded the GEMI Local Water Tool or used it, go there after this presentation and begin to read about it and learn how you might be able to use it with your company. The GEMI Local Water Tool assesses water-related impacts and risks. That's one of its key strengths. So how are these terms defined in the tool? I want to just touch on this briefly. Impact is defined as the extent to which the water used or discharged by a specific site affects the availability of that water for other uses or harms human health or ecosystems in any other way. So simply put, and shown by the red arrow on this graphic, it would be the impacts of your operations on the local watershed or local communities. And that could include something like the effluent of a discharge from your facility that affects water quality in the receiving water body. Risk, on the other hand, is defined as potential business liabilities faced by a site as a result of not only impacts, but also external water-related drivers and constraints. And you can probably think of many of these, but some examples of external risks might include, impacts due to other discharges in the river basin, perhaps a wastewater treatment plant upstream of your facility, population growth, which may lead to increased demand and competition for fresh water for human needs, environmental flow needs for sensitive or rare aquatic species. Social activism can create risks. There are many that you can think of, and I think the key here is that site operations with few water impacts may nevertheless face many water-related risks not directly associated with those operations. Let's look at the module framework for the GEMI Local Water Tool. It consists of 6 modules. The first module is called Site Data, and this is where the user enters data about the site, either manually or imported from the Global Water Tool, and assigns internal importance levels for all water sources and discharge points used by the site. So remember, this is a very detailed tool about your site, so it's going to deal with all of the water sources that you use and withdraw water from, and all of your discharge points, surface waters, groundwaters, every water body in use. In Module 2, then, the user is going to review available data and rate external stress severity levels for a comprehensive list of water issues outside of the facility's fence line. So looking out beyond your facility, what are the conditions of the surrounding environment, water resource environment? This is done for each water resource and discharge point. In Module 3, the External Impacts Assessment, the user assigns a magnitude of company contribution to each impact issue, and this is done to identify and rank external impacts due to site operations. So that gets back to the impacts definition you saw on the previous slide. Module 3 deals with the impacts of site operations. Module 4 is the risk assessment, and it identifies and ranks external risks to the site for each water source and discharge point. Module 5 then is the roll-up of the impact and risk information for each water issue. Based on the levels of risk and impact indicated, Module 5 allows the user to document management activities to address the highest impacts and risks. Module 6 then is the reporting and summary module. It provides water use metrics for sustainability reporting, and it provides a summary dashboard highlighting risks and impacts at the site. And this is a very helpful module for communicating with upper management the results and outcomes of a local water tool assessment. I want to touch on Module 2. Review of local external conditions drives the impacts and risks assessment. And Module 2 requires the most planning and effort and is extremely important. The local external stress severity levels that come out of Module 2 that the user rates are used in calculating impacts and risks in Modules 3 and 4. So for those of you who may have started to use the local water tool, I would imagine most of your energy and time has gone into populating the information in Module 2. So you can see here 6 different issue categories for the water sources and the discharge points. And the user will be rating the external condition stress severity levels for each of these various issues. The issue categories include physical source characteristics, physical supply reliability, and you can see what some of those are: population growth, industrial growth, projected impacts of climate change. And then there are issue categories for ecosystems, regulatory, economics, and social context. And this is the key element of the local water tool that drives your assessment. So where will you obtain reliable, incredible, and recent local data sources? Well, those could come from regulatory agencies, regional planning documents, scientific literature, maybe even company data or industry data. There's a wide variety of publicly available data online that may contribute to your assessment. And I do want to point out that GEMI has compiled a list of potential data sources as a suggested starting point for a local water assessment. And you can find that on their website, and it provides suggested sources by country. And I do want to add, before I move off of this slide, it's very important, Module 2 is the heart of the local water tool, and we will be discussing it and treating it in a lot of detail in the forthcoming workshop. Okay, so what are the tool outcomes of the local water tool? Well, it results in the following key outputs. It identifies and ranks specific impacts and specific risks, and it creates a dashboard shown here indicating high-level impacts and risks for each water source and each discharge point. The tool also calculates water metrics for internal use and for sustainability reporting. And one of the primary benefits of the tool is that it links risks and impacts to management plans and positive water management opportunities. And this portion of the tool is really up to the company to populate it in a way they view as appropriate. A lot of discretion is provided on what documentation the company might want to provide on management planning and opportunities. So again, for further details on the GEMI local water tool and how to use it, I would urge you to visit GEMI's website, shown at the end of the presentation. So in summary, a water risk assessment approach using the IPIECA Global Water Tool and the GEMI Local Water Tool provides business value because it gives you a consistent and credible approach for assessing water risks. It enables effective documentation of local impacts and risks at specific sites. It facilitates internal communication and can help heighten company awareness of potential water risks and impacts. And it can improve decision-making and help to shape proactive water management planning in your company. And finally, it really strengthens communications, both internally and externally with stakeholders. Okay, so at this point in the presentation, I want to welcome 2 individuals with companies who've been conducting water risk assessments using the Global Water Tool and Local Water Tool. They volunteered graciously to each provide short case studies on how they've applied the tools to their business operations. The first case study will be presented by Bill Gill of Smithfield Foods. Bill's the Assistant Vice President of Environmental Affairs, and Smithfield, as many of you know, is a GEMI member company. Bill will be followed by Maggie Monahan, who will present a case study for Chevron, an IPIECA member company. Maggie is an environmental engineer with Chevron, who's been working with these tools. So, Bill, I'll pass it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, a little bit about Smithfield Foods to sort of put our effort in context. Smithfield Foods is essentially a hog farming and meat processing company. As noted, we have operations in 12 countries. For this particular effort, for use of our water assessment, we focused on our wholly owned operations, which are actually in the countries that are shown in blue there on the slide. That's, of course, the United States, the United Kingdom, Poland, and Romania. As a company, we use, you can see, close to 10 billion gallons of water a year, so water risk is an issue for us. It's very significant to our operations. And so we had received a lot of inquiries from internal and external stakeholders, management, customers, NGOs, as to how we were managing water risk. We felt like that we were really in pretty good shape and had really no issues, certainly at least for the foreseeable futures, but didn't have a documented process. So we started with the World Business Council's Global Water Tool and looked at about 80 sites that we have within the countries shown in blue. We looked at those with the global tool to see, well, going forward, where would we have maybe potential water supply, water quality risk. By using the global tool, we pretty much narrowed our list to about 16 facilities, just a few in the United States, I think 2 or 3 in Romania, and maybe the rest in Poland. So based on the short list that we had, then we looked to apply the GEMI local water tool to drill down in more detail and examine what specific issues that we might have. So we focused on, obviously, instead of having to deal with 80 sites now, we were comfortable that we had 16 sites where there was even any reason for concern. So we focused on those and used the tool then to assess, as Steve had mentioned earlier, the impacts, the severity, the risk associated with our water use at those particular facilities. Of course, our presentation today involves how did this generate business value for the company. And of course, we found the water tool, we basically had one person, an internal individual, guide the process. He was able to, over the course of, I'm going to say, about 6 weeks, probably work his way through that process. He utilized contact, of course, with people at the individual sites. He used a database that's provided with the local tool to examine issues, and then more or less tried to confirm those with people that were more familiar with the local situation. And we found that actually bore out for us really well. In going through this process, like I said, it was fairly efficient. We didn't dedicate an individual for 6 full weeks. He was able to do this when it suited him. He could always return to the tool and add information. If he needed to find other information, he could go out and collect it. So, of course, as we went through the process in the various modules, we filled out the forms that were described earlier, and with that was able to, of course, generate a documented process where we had examined water risk. As it turned out, I guess maybe our initial thinking was fairly accurate. And that we didn't have any areas with very imminent or severe risk associated with water supply. But it did position us for several of our facilities. Our outcomes were such that we felt like we needed to sort of keep our ear to the ground in terms of local water supply issues, and had even one facility became a member of the local Public Works Water Committee. So, of course, they could be part of that process, even though they were actually kind of a small fish in a large pond. We wanted to be sure that we were aware of and part of the process. So this internally gave us a fair amount of confidence with where we were in terms of water supply and water risk. And then, going forward now, we're able to work with all these stakeholders with an interest, respond to customer surveys where they ask questions essentially, how are you managing water risk? What do you see as your water risk? I feel in a very efficient, very cost-effective way, we've been able now to answer those questions and respond in a documented way based on a specific standardized process. Like I said, we didn't really come across any surprises or unexpected issues, but we were able to confirm that there weren't any surprises or unexpected issues, which of course is very important to us as a company and to our management. So, I think because of that, we really were able to generate a significant business value out of the use of the global and then the GEMI local water tools to address our water risk going forward. So with that, Steve, on to Chevron.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And Maggie, you're up.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm located in San Ramon, California. So this slide shows Chevron's freshwater policy that we've developed. Chevron recognizes the value of fresh water as a fundamental social, environmental, and economic resource, and we've formed a freshwater strategy team in our corporate office, which I'm a part of, and I'm in our technology company. So there are corporate folks on the team as well as folks from the technology company, and we engage directly with our business units in both the upstream oil and gas production, exploration and production, as well as the downstream refining. We're a global company, and we know that access to sufficient sources of water is essential for the communities where we operate, as well as to our business. The picture on the left there is the Richmond refinery. Refining is our largest water consumer. On the industry average, it takes about 1 gallon of water per gallon of crude processed. And Chevron specifically focuses on looking for and utilizing lower value water streams in our refining processes, such as recycled municipal effluent, to reduce our freshwater consumption. So we have at the Richmond refinery a reverse osmosis system that we've developed in partnership with a municipality, and we're reusing municipal wastewater effluent at the refinery to reduce our freshwater consumption. On the upstream side, in the bottom right-hand corner, in the exploration and production side of the business, there are some activities with large water demands. In Kern County, which is in the Central Valley in California, where we've been producing for over 100 years, the oil is very heavy and requires steam flooding to get it to flow. And so steam flooding does have a high water demand, but we're able to recycle the water that we use for steam flooding, and then we produce back up with the oil. We produce about 10 barrels of water with every 1 barrel of oil, and we're able to recycle that water back into the steam flood process, as well as provide the excess water to a local water district to provide needed water in the area for agricultural use. And so how we've used the water risk assessment tools to date, that freshwater strategy team that I've mentioned has been kind of looking at the available tools, and we're working to incorporate them into our existing environmental processes at Chevron. We have mapped the Chevron operations using the IPIECA Global Water Tool for oil and gas. We found that it's been very useful for our internal communications, communicating water risk to upper management, as well as to our internal water resources assessments. We have internally a water resource assessment for all of our upstream operations, and providing these maps is a good input to our water subject matter experts to help to identify water risks. We've also used the mapping in our response in the Dow Jones Sustainability Assessment. With the GEMI local water tool for oil and gas, we've so far piloted the tool at a couple of Chevron sites. We actually selected both a sufficient, as ranked by the global water tool, as well as an extreme scarcity site, because we wanted to see, what the local water tool could maybe bring out in addition to what the global maps would tell us. And so we've piloted the local water tool. We've done it via having a workshop in person. We've sent some folks from our corporate and technology companies down to the sites and got a group of people together for a day-long workshop where we've gone through the tool, and we'll talk more about it at the workshop in October. And we're looking forward to hearing from other companies on their use of these tools as well.
Well, thank you, Maggie and Bill, for sharing your company's experiences using the global water tool and the local water tool. As Maggie mentioned, many other, Chevron will be presenting a more detailed case study at the forthcoming workshop, and many other companies have also been using these tools. Several other companies have also been invited and are planning to participate in the workshop to present more detailed case studies and share their experiences about how they've been adapting the tools for their water management purposes. So let's now look at the upcoming workshop that is scheduled for October 21st and 22nd in Houston, Texas. And it's going to be a one-day workshop in terms of total effort, but it's going to be split between 2 half-day sessions. And that's in part to help accommodate travel. So the first day will begin at lunch and go through the afternoon, and the second day will go through the morning and conclude with lunch. And the objectives of the workshop will be to familiarize companies across business sectors with the GEMI and IPIECA tools and their business value, discuss how companies are using the tools and obtaining necessary data and interpreting results. And again, I think much of the focus will be on organizing a local water assessment and how do you obtain recent and reliable data sets for use in Module 2. And then the objectives are to share lessons learned, challenges, and best practices, and perhaps to highlight suggestions for improvements to these tools. So again, I would encourage you to share any comments or thoughts about what you've heard today or for the workshop by sending them to the Q&A box for our consideration as we plan the workshop activities. That'd be very helpful and very much appreciated by IPIECA and GEMI. For more information about the Water Risk Assessment Tools Workshop, please email either Amy Goldman of GEMI at info@gemi.org or Ruth Romer of IPIECA at info@ipieca.org. And certainly I would encourage you to begin downloading and becoming familiar with the tools if you're not already using them. The IPIECA website and the GEMI websites are listed here on this slide. And with that, that includes the main portion of our webinar presentation. And so we're ready to entertain questions that have been submitted. And Carl, I'll let you lead that effort.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I've got a whole series of questions here, and I've tried to group them together and put them into some kind of an order here. So if you don't hear your exact question, it's because I've tried to group it with others that were similar to it. I'm going to touch on or ask each of the participants to respond based on the type of question, and I'm going to make it easy to begin with. I'll kick off by trying to answer a question that was put out there by myself, and then for the second question, we'll turn it over to one of the panel members. So one question that was asked was, is the tool applicable only to the oil and gas industry, or is it available for other industries, such as chemical or others? And the answer is there are 2 versions of the tool out there. One is for a multi-sector or any industry, and another one was created for the oil and gas industry specifically to see if we could put the same tool, the same concepts out there utilizing terminology that's common in that industry. If there is a need for other industries or in a collection of companies who would like to put together a tool that uses the same methodology but allows them to put their common language in there that they utilize, certainly that we could, GEMI would entertain developing and constructing a tool such as that, as would IPIECA. So if there is an interest, certainly that can be done, but the existing tools out there can be applied to any industry if you use the multi-sector tool. There's a whole series of questions around what are oil and gas companies doing to manage their water footprint. For that one, let me turn it over to Alistair Wyness of BP.
Yeah, there's a few questions out there related to how we disclose water, whether we use CDP, other issues. So I'd answer that by the oil and gas industry has historically, and more recent historically, been disclosing a lot of information via its sustainability reports and direct people, if they want to find out more about individual companies and what they do with water, how they use it, how much they use, where it's used. I'd point to the different sustainability reports that are published every year and are on the company websites. Some companies choose to disclose via CDP. That's a choice for individual companies. I would point out that IPIECA, and I'm one of the chairs of the IPIECA Water Working Group, and we've just launched last week at the World Water Week in Stockholm, IPIECA's Water Management Framework. And that defines a framework in which how we plan our use of water, how we investigate the impacts, the risks, the best approach, how that feeds into the design of the systems we operate to minimize use, make the most efficient use of water, and the most efficient use of our treatment systems so that we protect the environment. And it also includes sections on how we the information we collect and the information we report and how we review that data in a continuous improvement cycle to continuously develop our approaches. So that's on the IPIECA website, and people who are interested should download that, and it will give a lot more information in relation to what the oil and gas industry is doing now and planning to do in the future in the realm of water and how we manage water. Carl?
Thank you, Alistair. Let me turn to another grouping of questions that came up, which is around how does the tool address water demands in a particular area? I think this was directed mostly at the local water tool. Perhaps I can turn to Amy for a response on that.
Sure. So the tool requires the user to go out and find the best available data for local conditions, and the information for that can be found on the added local water tool fact sheet and the resources that we've created. This is not a all-inclusive list, but it's information we've collected, and it's a living, growing document which came out last year, and we launched an updated version earlier this year, at the beginning of this year. So it's a growing document. If you have suggestions for how to improve it, we would welcome those as well.
Thanks, Amy. And I might add, as part of that, the work that's done by the different companies in pulling this information together would include not only existing conditions for the tool, but also looks at forward-looking conditions. And it's in that you would begin to look at variability that would come from projected climate changes and other impacts. So thank you for that answer, Amy.
And Carl, a question just came in talking about weather events such as droughts and floods and predictability of that, and if the tools accommodate that. What you were just mentioning kind of addresses it a bit as well.
Another group of questions has been submitted around indicators and potential indicators that are outside what's currently done, both in the local water tool and the global water tool. They currently report as Bloomberg, CDP, GRI, and IPIECA indicators, and try and give a high level. But there are some comments around additional indicators. Maybe I can turn that some of those questions about are GEMI and IPIECA considering additional indicators over to Ruth Romer of IPIECA?
Thanks, Carl. So we are currently thinking about updating our own IPIECA indicators on water. And I know that CDP Water has just come out with some new indicators. So this is something that we'll continually consider, and the group will consider in any updates we do with the Global Water Tool. So any input or ideas on that are very welcome.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. A series of questions around external feedback and how the organizations go about or have gone about getting external feedback from NGOs and others on these tools. So I think we heard a bit from IPIECA this last World Water Week, but let me turn it over first to Amy, and then if there's additional comments by Ruth or Alistair to talk about how the organizations have gone about getting external feedback.
Thanks, Carl. So GEMI has historically, for several of our tools that we developed, created external advisory groups, of which we did for this tool as well, finding relevant organizations that focus on water issues and water sustainability, global organizations, not just U.S.-based organizations. So we had comprised a group of about 18 to 20 organizations that we pulled together at World Water Week in 2011, shared with them the tool and got feedback for it, and their input on the tool was incorporated into the tool. And a list of those organizations can be found on the gemi.org/local water tool webpage. We also have been getting feedback just through emails coming into info@gemi.org, and welcome your suggestions for it as well. Ruth, do you want to add some more?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Amy. So as has already been mentioned, IPIECA tries to play an active role at World Water Week each year in Stockholm. I think for the last 4 years, IPIECA has been there. I think 2 years ago we ran a joint session with GEMI on the tools. And this year, just 2 weeks ago, we ran a side session where we launched our recent IPIECA water management framework. So in direct response to how we solicit feedback from the NGOs and other non-industry bodies, that side event was very well attended by non-industry individuals, and we fielded many questions and welcomed input and feedback on the framework. And following this side event, we also ran a smaller specific dialogue with a select group of stakeholders to seek specific input on the water management framework that we just launched. So Alistair, do you have anything else to add on that particular soliciting input from NGOs or other stakeholders?
No, I just think it's an important aspect to develop our understanding of risk, that these tools and the way we develop the water management framework for the oil and gas industry. So as we said, we met with a number of them, and I think there was good positive feedback. There was also lots of ideas on how we take this further forward and how we may move further forward. We're going to pull all that information together, discuss it amongst the members of IPIECA and decide on a way forward. Carl?
Great, thank you. We had a question on one of the case studies around goal setting, and there are some general questions around goal setting, but in particular around some metrics or objectives around the Smithfield example. And so, Bill, maybe you can answer the question as to whether or not Smithfield has determined or you looked at metrics such as liter of water used or wastewater generated per unit of production.
Thanks, Carl. Yes, really, I guess we established kind of water use goals separate, really, from the use of the tool per se. We focused with the tool on risk and risk management, but as a company, we do have specific reduction goals related to water use that apply at the facility as well as the corporate level. We're actually seeking to reduce our water consumption by 10% by the end of our physical FY15. So those goals are in place, and of course we have a system where we collect water use from each of our facilities and roll that into a software that we have so we can contrast and compare and look at our water use across our facilities. Of course, if we look at the tool and we see areas where maybe there is some risk or facilities that have higher usages than others for similar operations, then of course we try to transfer the best practices to the facilities where they're needed so we can continue to look at water use. We typically do look at kind of efficiency and water use per 100 pounds of product produced is kind of an industry standard. So we utilize that and separately from the water tool, but in conjunction with its use, we do track our water usage, and we have goals established to address our water usage.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Let's see, a few more questions here around, there's one grouping of questions around the type of expertise and confidence in the outcome from these tools. And let me try and take that one. In that, obviously, in developing a tool like this, the local water tool in particular, a fair amount of expertise is required, both internally within a company and sometimes externally. And so, part of the discussion and the development of the input and the outputs for these tools is around getting the experts involved, the data for that local area, because as all of you know, water is a very local issue. To get this expertise and this information together to allow you to do, again, a systematic evaluation of what the potential risks are and what the potential mitigation plans are. This tool is intended for internal use within a company, for allowing a company to consistently and systematically evaluate their own risk at a particular site. In addition, there are some questions around the ability to drill deeper with this tool. And with this tool, the way that both the tools have been designed and the way they're allowed to link up with each other, it allows you to go as deep or as detailed as you are able to do or interested in doing. And it allows you to look at both freshwater, non-freshwater intakes, and also the discharge and disposal on the backside of those. So these tools really are trying to look at a comprehensive risk evaluation of both the inlet and the outlet water. All right, I'm looking here at the list. There are a couple of requests for links to the various tools. And so up on the screen, as you can see, there are some links there for where those tools are available at. And if you do want to download them, we encourage you to do so. Take a look at them. And if there are comments or questions, please offer feedback to either Amy Goldman or Ruth Romer. I think that's all of the questions we've had today, and I want to thank everyone for attending today's session and for all of the panelists who participated in sharing information about the tool. I want to thank them also. And with that, let me turn it over to our hosts and see if there are any other closing comments before we end this call. Thank you again.
Thank you, Carl. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now, but I'd also like to thank all the panelists for their time today and for getting through so many questions, and also for everyone who's joined us for this webinar. Just to remind you, a recording of the webinar and the presentation slides will be archived on the 2 Degrees platform. So I hope you found today interesting and useful, and that you'll be able to join us for further webinars in the coming weeks. So thank you.